The question I have to present to you guys today: what is the next big genre of anime? What's gonna take over the whole sphere? What's gonna blow up and have all our minds blown?
Jose.
I'd probably say seinen.
Seinen, I like that. I like that. That's
Wait, did you say demographic or genre?
Genre.
I said genre. Yeah, genre.
You guys, you did the thing. You said that we had to establish. Okay,
Yeah, man.
These are different things.
You got to start the pod off with showing them what not to do.
True. Sorry, my bad.
Come on, man. We just listed are not genres, so please, commenters, YouTubers, flowers,
yeah,
and boppers.
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 Welcome to the boppers. Do not say in the comment section shonen because it's not a genre. That means young boy. You don't want the death of young boys. I promise you. You don't want young boys to be the next big thing.
And if you want to get the reference of the flowers and the boppers, then you got to tune to the stream. So firstly,
That's true.
Go follow, please.
Go follow.
Come on, man.
Subscribe.
But to actually answer the question, at least for me, I think that when it comes to anime, we are starting to see a resurgence in highly acclaimed and, returning popularity of some traditional fantasy series. Of course, can't talk about anime in 2024 without mentioning Sosu no Frieren. You cannot.
True.
What? Oh no! Mookie,
Sick of hearing it.
no.
Nah, I'm kidding. Yes, I've seen the Elf Girl on Twitter. I've heard of her. Yes, go ahead.
I'll blame you, man.
Do you mean like a resurgence of like good fantasy?
That's a interesting distinction.
Like every season we're dumped with like 20 billion. Like you can go down the list of like seasonal shows. There's like you have your 20 good shows or 20 shows or whatever, and then it's like the last 20 are just all fantasy. Just the same thing. Like I hope you mean like good fantasy.
I mean traditional fantasy. So
like not isekai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
not
like,
isekai.
okay,
Tropes from established from like Tolkien and those settings.
Oh, name drop. Tolkien. Yeah. I don't think anime fans know what Tolkien is. I'm gonna be honest.
Really?
Break it down for him.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just taking a dig at anime fans. What's a Tolkien? Is that a new anime? I don't know about this one. I've never heard of it.
I think it's coming out next season. Next to who's the guy that wrote Dune?
Frank Herbert, yeah. Herbers, we call him, yeah. That was exactly the answer I was going to have in terms of it being fantasy. In a sense, because I then saw so many new fantasy manga, or not new fantasy manga, but fantasy manga that had been around since like the mid-2000s, suddenly were getting exposure to getting anime adaptations because of Frieren. And they weren't isekai based, which is like, obviously, like, like TK said, it's like so many that we get every season that it's almost like whenever I'm thinking, oh man, I would just love to watch a fantasy series. And then you put through the filters and it's like isekai, that's an isekai, that's also an isekai. Okay, he's reincarnated, but isekai, and it's like just endless, and there's nothing that feels more traditional because it's like so lost and it's been reiterated upon so much that you can no longer get the original that you had. And so now I'm seeing like there's a manga I remember reading a bit of called Überblatt, dark fantasy manga that ran for around like I think 10 volumes, something like that. Wasn't for me, I didn't keep reading it, but then I saw it got announced that it was going to get an anime adaptation, and that stopped releasing in like 2010, 2013. And now suddenly it's like, hey, we want to get an adaptation. And it would probably be because not only of Frieren, but also Delicious in Dungeon being fantasy that isn't involving characters who are from our world or another world, but just characters who live in a fantasy setting. What most people probably think is new, but is the same thing that has been done before, but it's now just reintroduced into, I'll say, the zeitgeist of only isekai. That's all you have. That's all you know. And then finally it's like, oh, hang on, this is just like normal fantasy again. It's actually a bit more interesting.
It's gone to the point after all these years of just the same like fantasy isekai being dropped. A lot of people think isekai is like its own separate, but it's like it's a subgenre of fantasy. So it's like when you get a fantasy series like Frieren or Delicious Dungeon, like you said, it's like they're not listing it as a fantasy because the only fantasy they know are isekais. It's like I don't blame them only because of what we get, but yeah, I'm liking that we're getting like more traditional like good fantasies rather than the same BS we've been getting for like however long.
For decades. They've been churning these out since like the early 2000s. I think it was 2011 is when Sword Art started kind of started that, changed the world in probably one of the worst ways possible. Created this whole new thing that made us go, oh, fuck. I think when, we talk about, what's the next big genre, I think it's kind of looking at what is not currently interesting now until someone makes something extremely interesting. So like before Frieren, before Dungeon Meshi was adapted, because they already existed, right? And there's a manga called like Witch Hat Atelier, which fantasy fans love. And they said if it ever gets adapted, people are going to lose their shit, right? It's not until one of those series gets adapted and does something that makes people go, oh, wait, the genre is still good. It's just that no one's made anything that feels fresh or new. Just before like Chainsaw Man kind of came out, you had so many different kind of yokai and demon manga come out that felt similar. And then you had Chainsaw Man, which was like, here's something that says it's going to be similar, but it's actually going to be nothing you've seen in so many different ways, not only in like a genre, but also shonen, where it's like, I'm going to take every trope of shonen and I'm literally going to flip it upside down. But you'll still enjoy it because it's still a shonen.
Even with Go-Go Loser Ranger as well, that's also a fantasy.
Yeah, right.
Nothing like what you would imagine of, fantasies that we know of nowadays.
Yeah.
To be like. So it's like, it's completely different. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
watching, it's like, I didn't even know this was a fantasy. It was like,
it's kind of going against like Super Sentai Power Rangers thing, where it's like people know the concept of Power Rangers, but what if I took it and gave you these awful people?
Yeah,
and then you have this character who is just like trodden down.
Yeah, because I like that and concept a lot.
Yeah, and that's why we love shit like One Punch Man when it first came out, because you know what a superhero is, but then the concept of one that always wins and is depressed because of it is just so different. Because it's like, it's the best part, I think, when you find something new in a genre where suddenly a switch is flipped where you're like, holy shit, I never thought of that. Like, no one would ever think of that as an idea, and it's because someone did and they made it. It's now kind of changed everything.
And a comedy in it as well.
The
comedy contrast, like I would say in terms of like series like One Punch Man, I don't mean to interrupt. The series like One Punch Man, I feel like it does the comedy and action. Like it balances the serious tones with the comedy very well compared to like other series. I'm not a big fan of Mashal at all.
Right.
I think obviously Mashal is pretty much One Punch Man and like Black Clover, or One Punch Man and Harry Potter, where it's like has serious tones, but at its core, it's pretty much a comedy, which I'm not slighting it for. But I just don't think the way it handles its comedy scenes when a serious scene is like going on, I don't like it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Right.
But I think One Punch Man does it very well.
You know,
no, I guess
we're not doing this. Stop. We're not doing this.
Look. TK believes that Mashal was the best comedy anime.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
This propaganda
it's true. It's
true.
Funny at all.
From you.
It's true.
From you specifically, this is nasty.
You were on.
Hold on.
Someone else and voted for
Mashal.
Mashal.
Because we was on your channel. He was on your channel. I said we're not voting for Mashal. I said if you vote for Mashal, I'm leaving.
But we voted for Mashal. You didn't leave though. You stayed. You stayed.
I don't want to leave you alone, bro. Leave you alone.
That says something. He stayed. He didn't want to vote for Mashal, but he stayed anyway.
So we had a lot of the panels to go through.
He's
just
being
coming
a good friend.
from River. River, if I'm not mistaken, did you not say that it was the best comedy of the year?
He did say that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Crazy. I mean, I'm okay. I'm not even gonna sit here and because I feel like if we're gonna talk about like genres that are like coming up, I kind of do want to preface like genres that's falling off. I'm not gonna sit here and say like comedy is falling off per se, but I think a lot of the soul comedy series aren't as good or funny as they used to be. I feel like it's the shows with a comedy undertone rather than the comedy being the main focal point of the series that are more funny than, per se a Mashal or a Black Clover or something like that.
I think that's true because it's a lot of comedy, at least in anime and manga nowadays, is what is the premise that brings the comedy as opposed to character writing. And I think that's kind of a big difference. Like One Punch Man, I think is hilarious, but it's also hilarious because Saitama in his own way is just a ridiculous kind of character who doesn't take anything seriously, and juxtaposed to other people he's funny. Whereas like the premise, if you were to have One Punch Man and then have Saitama be a morally upstanding, good person who isn't kind of selfish in terms of his own satisfaction when it comes to fights, wouldn't be as interesting. You know what I mean? And I think we haven't, at least for me, you know, I've always, shocker, I don't watch a lot of anime that's currently running on any seasons because I'm just, you know, I'm one of those manga guys.
Right.
But I haven't, you know, only recently have I read something where it's like, that's fucking funny. Like the fact that he just said that immediately after that character saying that is fucking funny. And that rarely kind of happens a lot, you know, in terms of just character writing. You know, I think that's the issue, is that we rely so much on the premise to just bring the comedy, as opposed to like, okay, the premise is funny, but how do we elevate it with characters where they say, okay, what if that character said this? Like, I fucking love this one that in Chainsaw Man, there's a scene, if everyone here's seen it, at least the anime, when they're at dinner and Himeno is like saying, it's like, you know, saying, Denji, when are we going to kiss? Right. And then, Maki is just like, Denji, you're kissing someone? In the manga, he says, hell no. And then Himeno's like, what, Denji, you want to kiss? And he's like, hell yeah. They're the exact same panel, just drawn exactly the same. The only difference is the dialogue. And that's fucking funny because that's his character, you know?
I feel like,
and it's shit like that.
I would say it's a character.
We don't have that as much.
More so than the jokes that they tried to push.
Yes.
That's
for sure.
really what, because it's like, okay, even though I said it earlier, I just want to like preface it. Like Black Clover, when they tried to like repeatedly push the army toilet joke, it's just like, it didn't hit the first time. It may have hit to some, but it didn't hit the first time. It's not going to hit the 20 plus times that you do it. Even though I would say sports and comedy goes hand in hand. I think sports series and comedy go hand in hand simply because like young boys, they like to joke around a lot. And it's like, it's more so the interaction. And plus we can relate to it too, because obviously we've also all been at a point where it's like, we're just joking around with our homie playing whatever sport. So it's like, the jokes like that, when it's not forced, it's just natural character interactions, much better than a gag comedy trying to like push the same jokes over and over again.
I think we get a lot of that because so much of shonen started as gag manga. So in a lot of like, you know, anime that are adapted, it's just like, okay, how do we just, you know, interject more jokes that at least like bring down the tone out, like the tone of the scene, which is like at first very dire, but then how do we make it a little bit more chill and comedic? And, you know, it comes from that whole gag stuff. And I've tried reading some of them and I'm like, fuck, I can't do this.
Yeah.
This can't. It's some stuff's too dated.
Yeah, because it's like they're trying to modernize, they're trying to like pander to the new audience. Like, I get it. But it's just like it's lost its charm that it once had. Like someone in chat said, Hajime no Ippo was like kind of funny. When I recently watched Hajime no Ippo, I think Hajime no Ippo is hilarious. It's like it doesn't try to push anything, but like I said, I just goes back into like the sports series, like something that's airing right now. I know you said that you're not up to date. I don't know if anyone else has started watching it or not. Ippo. But Oblivion Battery is a baseball anime that recently came out this season. I think that show is hilarious. That show is hilarious. Like pretty much the guy, two characters who were like overpowered as hell, but one of them suffered a head injury. So it's like he has amnesia, so he's forgotten who he was. Like he was him, he was that guy, but he's forgotten who he was. So like, he's pretty much a dumbass now. But at first, I thought it was going to be corny and cringe. Like, the first episode, I was like, I don't know, it might be all right. But the second episode, I'm not going to lie, I was in tears. It does a great job of, like, balancing, when to not overdo the whole amnesia stuff, I think.
Yeah, right.
It's like, I like it. I'm not going to say I like it. But
that's a trope that can get old real fast.
Yeah.
And you're playing JRPG, so you know you've seen the amnesia trope.
The amnesia thing.
So every second one.
You can't go a JRPG without someone losing their memory.
It's like Final Fantasy game. Give him amnesia. It'll be great.
God.
There's a in terms of, like you said, sports manga, and I'm thinking of comedy. I think genuine like sports manga is definitely, or sports anime manga is probably one of the best genres to use that juxtaposition of comedy and seriousness because like the amount of times when I was like reading Slam Dunk where I'd be like, fuck, this is so funny. And
Hilarious.
then holy shit, I don't know what's gonna happen next. Are they gonna win? Fuck,
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump out of my seat, you know? And that's like, I think that's a genre that will just always be consistent, especially because it's been around for like so long, like before anime. And I think Slam Dunk also helped bridge that, where it's like, ooh, that was like such a huge anime where, okay, do you have a sports manga? Let's adapt it. Surely someone will like, you know, like love it. And if you're able to, you know, have that between, you know, comedy and also making sure that the characters are learning and growing, you know, it'd be a banger, even if it's about any sport, you know, like there's a sport about billiards as well. I mean, a manga about billiards. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. Someone's reading it, you know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That first, when I first kind of got into, before I got into sports series, I was kind of like, I was one of those people at first was like, I'd rather just go play it. But then it's like, I watched my first sports series and I was like, I can understand why this is so good. Like, no matter what the sports is, I've gone to because sports is definitely one of my favorite genres with ease. And I think it's one of the best genres altogether, in my personal opinion. You can't really go wrong with a sports series. But I would say it's like no matter what the sports is, it could be what's one that's like stupid, but it's like a
Captain Tsubasa. Let me stop.
Captain Tsubasa. Yeah,
I haven't even read it, bro. I just remember when that game came out.
Yeah, I was gonna play it.
Oh yeah, it was like hype as fuck. I don't know. This hates like they all have those ridiculous moments.
Yeah.
You know, there is a bit in Slam Dunk where a character goes to do, I think, a 3-pointer. He misses. The ball hits Sakuragi, the main character, in the face.
Yeah.
And then goes in to the hoop.
Yeah, it's
and
so,
then
it's so
everyone stops and goes, "What the fuck?" And then Sakuragi's like holding his face and he's bleeding, and then you see his face and he's like, "I did that on purpose."
Yeah, he's just like, "Oh, I'm a genius. I'm a tensai." I did that.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm a tensai." And then the other dude, Miyagi, said, "I knew it would do that. I purposely missed to aim for his face because I knew it would go back in."
You know,
and
those
both
two,
like, tensai.
Those two and their interactions, like when they, I forgot who it was. Was it Hanamichi? I think that's his name.
Yeah, Sakuragi.
Sakuragi. No, sorry, I said his first name. Who was the one who left and became a Mitsui,
I think Mitsui, yeah.
Sakuragi and Miyagi, when they like did the fist pose and then like looked at what was his name, Akagi? I think that's his name, the gorilla.
Yeah.
I was just like, these guys, like, they're so stupid, but it's stupid in a good way.
Yeah, and I think that's the ridiculousness of it. And then, you know, it changed eventually where it was like, okay, Kokoro Basket, where it's like, let's have these guys just become Super Saiyan. Yeah. They become lightning fast, and they go into all out mode, and then they you know, it's like just like abilities and tricks, and I'm just like, okay, I've seen this. This seems cool, but at the same time, I've seen this in other genres. You know,
it's like
Kuroko. Kind of
one of my favorites that takes the whole superpower thing, but it's like really, like, they really have special moves, is Inazuma 11. I absolutely adore Inazuma 11. I'm not gonna lie, but sports, you can't go wrong with sports. Whether it's driving, climbing, boxing, football,
it's true. Anything,
like,
and they can go either way.
Yeah,
it's the relatability with it, because like whether it's a specific sport that we've played or whatever, we know team dynamics, and even if it's an individual, like I'm a big fan of Blue Box right now, and you know, they don't have a lot of moments to hit the same levels of like accidental plays as, like, you know, you would see in like a basketball or even a soccer series or potentially even a baseball series, with like probably just like a missed ball, it lands right next to you. That's the gag. That's the joke. But like those opportunities aren't there, but it's the relatability of how we know these systems to work. that like I think really makes them work with the comedy.
Yeah.
And even going back to, you know, just the whether it be the downfall of the genre or the genre adapting over time, I think that for a lot of people, comedy is starting to become the subgenre that, you know, will make an anime or make a series more easily palatable, easily digestible. But whether you want to see 24 episodes of just people spouting jokes, of people just one-upping each other, of just pure ridiculousness, honestly, the last anime or manga, honestly, because unless I'm wrong, y'all read way more manga than me. I'm starting to get into it, but the last series that I read or watched that like really that was the thing, and it was able to reach a level of popularity or acclaim, it's like Psyche K.
I haven't watched Psyche
at least
K.
to me.
One of my friends said they dropped it because the jokes got repetitive very quickly.
Yeah. And if you don't have other things to supplement that, whether it be action, whether it be romance, whatever the case may be, I don't know how you continue to attract that same attention.
Yeah.
At least with the way that people's minds are developing. Like we touched on, you know, talking about fantasy, people are starting to accept. I was staying on traditional fantasy, but even just the genre in general, people are starting to accept different interpretations of the themes of the genre, of the traditional storytelling methods. And if that's the case with comedy, part of comedy, I believe, especially in a series sense, is that you have the running gag. You have the joke that's going to hit all the time until it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then if you're just a comedy series, then you don't really have much else to supplement that with.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I guess maybe obviously I don't know how the Japanese audience would like how they feel about comedy, because obviously certain jokes is kind of Japanese jokes, so they would understand more than the Western audience. But like you said, it's like unless you have something else to go along with the comedy, I don't know how you would have like a long running comedy that's like gonna hit the same gags over and over again, and it's gonna hit like you heard it the first time. Like I don't know how. Like one that I would say, but it's like it's a comedy at heart, but I think the serious moments really like benefit from the comedy. Is Gintama. I'll say
Gintama.
The comedy
like
parts,
the long running one.
Yeah, like a lot of people say that it's not funny, it's boring. When does it get serious? A lot of people go in there with the wrong mindset. I understand, I get it, because the last like stretch is like what's held to like a high standard. But I think the comedy makes the series, because if you don't have the comedy, most of those serious moments, you're not gonna feel any emotional attachment to any of the characters. And when it hits those emotional beats, you're not gonna feel anything, because those comedy moments make you attached to the characters, and it builds on their character relationships and shit. So it's like Gintama for me, I think it's funny. The only thing that I didn't like was just the repetitive dick and ass jokes that kind of like towards the end, it kind of like
nice.
I've heard this 50 million times now. It was funny at first, I'm not gonna lie, but it's like towards the end, it's just like, bruh, can we stop? Like I bet
in terms of
no, go on. Sorry.
2003 to 2019, that's a lot of dick and ass jokes to run.
Coming up on the internet, that's it, bro.
That's
and at the time, 2003, dick and ass jokes was like the pinnacle.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, people it goes dick and ass jokes, and then it was Pickle Rick. You know what I mean? That's how it goes, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's another thing too. Humor has changed a lot. Like when I see old YouTube clips from like 2008 when YouTube didn't post anything, they're not funny now. They're cringe, but back then those shits were hilarious.
Hey, bro, you can't tell me sitting on a toilet still doesn't slap. You know, come on, dude. Sitting on the toilet still is fucking banger. You can't say it doesn't.
That was funny, but it's like, bro, looking back at it now, it's like, I don't know.
So sick, dude. So good.
And that's why it's hard to get it to work for a 24 episode season, because of how fast.
I agree. I think, I don't know. I love sitting on a toilet. I don't think I'll be able to watch 24 episodes of that, you know, personally.
I can see it. I think it is definitely unique to find a comedy anime these days that'll give you the type of comedy that we used to get. Because I know you mentioned Hajime no Ippo TK earlier,
Yeah,
and watching it right now as well, it is definitely has funny moments. It just feels, even though sometimes it'll feel forced, they're still able to make it hit when they
yeah,
do it, and it's like now it just doesn't have that a lot of times. Like I think, I mean, that's in a lot of shonen, I guess, but just in anime in general, I mean, there's just not as many comedy anime that are as popular these days. I do
Mm,
think the Uprising in Fantasy is a good shout. I think that can definitely come back. I mean, seeing the success of Frieren definitely
yeah.
goes into that.
yeah.
I do think there are a few other genres that I think could get shouts here in terms of, I think there is potential that, I mean, I'm not saying that it's gonna be out of nowhere because there's been a lot of good ones even
Mm.
recently, like sports anime. I think potentially could even rise even higher heights than have now because we've seen the success of Haikyuu, we've seen the success of Blue Lock. So now if there are more sports anime that start to come out that can kind of break into that mainstream and break into that
Yeah.
those next levels, I could see even more, having that opportunity to.
I would say
I
my
can.
only thing is with sports is I don't want to be one of those people that say, oh, new era, new gen stuff is bad, old stuff good. I don't want to be one of those
But
like
Mm,
I don't want to just be like, oh,
but
saying I don't like new stuff, only old things are good or whatever. But it's like I don't know. With the amount of like sports series that I've peeped, there's a charm that the old sports series were able to hit compared to
Hmm.
now. I think like if you
There's
was to
a
compare like a Blue Lock to, I'll just say Slam Dunk. Like
yeah.
yeah, Slam Dunk story wasn't like crazy. I'll say premise wise, Blue Lock has like an up on it, but I think more so the characters. Because for me, obviously it's common. The characters are what drives the narrative. If I
Yeah.
don't mess with
right.
the characters, I won't mess with the overall story pretty much. Like I can give it its fair dues, but like overall, I won't really mess with it. It's the characters that I need to be like liking at least.
Mm.
And I think it's
Mm.
like the character wise, it's like I don't know. Especially
I
since
think
I think. Sorry, go on.
no, you go because like you finish your point.
I was just gonna say I feel like it's not just sports; it's just series in general. The handling
Mm,
of large casts has become like less like back then. You got if you talk about best casts in anime and manga, majority of the time you're naming older shows, Monster, Gintama, FMAB, etc., older shows. I feel
mm.
like now it's just
Mm.
like cast of characters don't have the type of like shine that they did, unless there's things that I'm just missing, which is probably because it's on my mind. I
Right.
can't really think of anything off the top of my head. But I don't know. I just don't think it's like I feel like majority of the times there's too many cast of characters. It's like they're not giving them their proper just dues. I
I
don't
think
know.
I think you're partially right in terms of like
Yeah,
feeling that way because I think what you're talking about is the same where it's a common thing that we have in terms of any medium, right? Where it's like you
yeah,
feel like the shows or the art that you experienced when you were younger, when you first experienced it, feels more special than it does today because you've probably already seen it reiterated upon, copied, pasted, redone
Yeah.
continuously over time that you feel like it's not as special as when you first experienced it. And we probably, if we all talked about our favorite anime and when it came out, it'd be very different from someone growing up now who's like, holy shit, this is like my favorite series of all time, which is like was created 5 years ago or 3 years ago. But in terms of
yeah,
like the sports manga, I think you have a point because like Slam Dunk, like I love Slam Dunk. It's like one of my favorite
yeah,
series of all time. And I if you look at me, I'm not a sports guy. I think that's pretty obvious to tell. Um, athletic, no. And I I love it because the character, because like you said, the character is very good. But something like Blue Lock is interesting in its premise, but in terms of what it is that makes the
yeah,
characters interesting, I would have to wait and see to read it because ultimately Slam Dunk has more than just the idea of basketball. It's like every character has a reason why they play besides trying to be the best. And they have their own reasons of wanting to be the
yeah,
best in it, you know? And it to me, from what I've seen of Blue Lock, it's a lot more cynical in terms of working together as opposed to maybe Slam Dunk where we do not want to work together, but if we do, holy shit, we win. every nearly every time, and that's awesome. And I think that's probably something that is lost when you make new series, because I'll be honest, the best series that come out now that I think are really interesting, that do find us a place like Frieren, and maybe like a series like Cardi was saying with Blue Box, where it might come out and become like this big anime, is because if you look at Blue Box, it's like, okay, romance sports, okay, that was slam dunk in its beginning. It was a romance sports story, and then it turned into a sports romance story, where it focused less on Sakuragi trying to get with Haruko, and more on like, oh shit, I actually like basketball. And I think it depends on the people creating the anime or the manga getting inspiration from more than just one place. You know what I mean? Because I think that's the bigger issue. If you were to say to people making manga now and creating the series, and you ask them, what are your inspirations? If they only really have manga and it's newer, they may, or at least they're only taking from a certain aspect or a certain story and not taking in from anything else, it's going to feel repetitive, because they're only taking from that thing we already know. It's like, oh, here's this new battle shonen. What's your favorite manga of all time? I love Dragon Ball Z. And it's like, anything else? It's like, no, I just love Dragon Ball Z. And you can see the inspirations here. And then you'll read it and you'll be like, yeah, this is just a new version of Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, it's like, oh, shit. And it may do very well for people who want that feeling again, but at the same time, it doesn't have that thing that makes people go, wow, this is like so new from anything else. And I think the manga now that are doing very well, at least on Jump Plus, that are getting adapted, they have been inspired by not only manga, but films and TV and art, in general. Like Fujimoto fucking loves movies. You see it in references in the anime.
Oh my God.
You look at Yuji Kaku. He loves fucking, the Yakuza games. You look at all these different things that these artists have, and they take from different things besides just the medium that we already really like.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what it comes down to. At least for me, that's how I see it.
I'll say real quick, before I piggyback off an earlier point that you said, to do with Fujimoto real quick. The series, if we're talking just straight within Japanese media, medium, the manga that Fujimoto is influenced by, if people were to go read that, and you just see the setting that it's in, and I forgot his name is Tuts, I forgot his name. He did Abara and Blam.
Oh yeah, Blam.
Abara,
I can't remember his name.
I forgot his name. But Abara was Chainsaw Man's inspiration, and obviously you can see it within the Chainsaw Man design and the character in Abara. But if you were to read his series, it's it's sci-fi, but it's not what you're expecting. You go in there, you have to piece the story, you have to piece the narrative together on your own.
Yes,
it's more so just landscape, and you have to dissect and understand what's going on in the area and whatnot. So,
Tsutomu Nihei.
Yeah, Tsutomu Nihei.
I believe. Yeah.
Because I know someone else that he was working with, Tsutomu Takahashi. He's another one that I like. But
that's right.
That's something completely different.
Yeah, and you could definitely see that people who like Chainsaw Man probably may not like Blam in the same way. And it's kind of loops back around, because I was reading his latest manga that's been releasing, which happens to be fantasy, traditional fantasy, and I think you can tell that, and it's a lot more interesting than what you would see of other stuff. And I don't know how he did it. Well, I kind of do, but he took the most basic traditional fantasy story of all time, and then he made it somehow really interesting, where it was like, okay, farmer boy becomes knight, needs to save princess in tower, and somehow made it like Dark Souls inspired, because this tower is a fucking monolith. Wow. Like you were talking about landscapes, instead of just a tower of just thinking of wood tower, it is a tower that is kilometers wide, floats above the earth, and goes all the way up until past the clouds into the atmosphere. And the princess is at the top being held by this thing. And it's basically, when they get in there, it's like, okay, you can get lost in here. There are there are people who live here somehow for hundreds of years, and it's like somehow just so different from what you would expect of that premise. And I think that comes down to like the next big genre of like, if you can get people who can take staple stories of the genre but then say, I'm going to do it so different that you won't even realize it's the same thing, that's the key, right?
Yeah,
because you wouldn't even think about it, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. To piggyback off your other point, for me personally, I'm not really like, I don't discredit works if it's similar, if it does the same tropes or premises as other series.
Yeah,
It's just, it depends on the execution. You can have two series with, oh boy, there's these opposing forces, boy gets attacked by one, he then wants to join the agency that's like defeating them, and then he's half of what they're opposing. You've seen that in you say AOT, Kaiju number 8, JJK, Chainsaw Man, etc. But it's how you do it. It's your storytelling ability, characters, everything else. That's what I'm like looking on. I'm not gonna judge something like if I read this like, oh, I've seen this 20 million times. Yeah, we have, because it's like, how often do you expect like new fresh ideas to look how many the amount of manga that gets published like like I don't know how many new ideas we expect to see, but it just depends on the execution, really. That's just my whole thing.
It's the idea that every story that has been told has been, but in how they take a story that's been told and change it to create something that feels so new, and in a way is, because you can't look at something and say that's just exactly the same, one to one, you know, and it in its own identity has just something enough that makes it go, oh, this just isn't the same, but it is, and you can't put your finger on it. I think that's just really good art in general.
Like Baki as an example, when it comes to like mixed martial arts, it's the same as other mixed martial arts. It's just that Baki like takes it way over the top, further than martial arts, and I think that's its charm because of how stupid, how over the top it is. So it's like you just got within the genres, you got to do other things, and like you said, it's like when it comes to fantasy, especially isekai, there's such a broad the world that you can like look at, the world of fantasy and the amount of things you can do. It's insane. The amount of possibilities within like fantasy, the ideas you can come up with is insane. I don't know why it's like it's just the same things being done.
Yeah.
The possibilities are like quite literally endless within a fantasy series, and I don't understand this. Why I think other things just don't really get explored within fantasy, to be honest with you.
I just had my brain meltdown because this is the guy that wrote Wolverine Snicked, which was like a miniseries comic run like when I was born, like 2003, but I've gone back and read it, and it's one of the greatest Wolverine books I've ever read. It has some amazingly written panels and pages. That's why I gotta read Knights of Sidonia, because I'm sure that the spreads in there is amazing.
Oh shit!
Knights of Sidonia is another one that I also plan to read.
Yeah.
So something else that comes to my mind that I want to mention. Now I don't know if I can pin this down as a specific genre necessarily, but I do feel like anime is kind of shifting in a direction now, because we see like the rise of Frieren, we see the rise of other things that like people aren't wanting to see, you know, your generic isekais, your generic battle show anymore. Like that's kind of, you know, overblown. I feel like now what we're going to start to potentially see is more story specific driven series, more character driven series that there's more depth to these series that people are going to start to go to. Now, I can't necessarily pin it down to a genre, but do you guys see that kind of happening in terms of more mainstream? Because obviously, you know, the more hardcore anime fans, there obviously has still been that consistent, okay, well, we want to see these great stories, we want to see these great characters with plot, et cetera, et cetera. But do we feel like as a whole that could potentially be something that's changing? Because obviously we're talking about the next big genre of anime,
Yeah.
I think that's got to apply to encompassing everybody. So
Yeah,
I'll just give my quick opinion on it before I go on a yap session.
go for it.
I'll just give everyone
Because I will as well.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I feel because I don't know obviously every single series that's like releasing as of recent in terms of like both anime
Yeah, of
and
course.
manga, but I would say it's in terms of like character driven or like certain things, I would say that there's a lot of series recently that have pertained to what you're saying. Like I'll give a romance as an example. Insomniac's After School. I would say that's one that's like character, like somewhat really like character driven. It's like really the dynamic between the main leads and how they tie in the whole insomnia thing and their connection and understanding with each other through insomnia. That really is like it made when the emotional shit happened. I'm not gonna lie, I almost teared up. When I read it. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a very good series. But I don't know. There's something about certain series it just doesn't hit the same for me sometimes. Like I would say on a larger scale, there's like you have your 1 or 2 gems for the year. And it's like the rest are like good. But they're not groundbreaking the way like some of my favorites are, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just kinda like up in the air. It's kinda up in the air.
Okay. I will now go on a yap session, if that's okay.
cool.
Let me tell you guys a story.
What's up?
In the early 2000s, there was a movie that was being made, and it was based on a book, and people were thinking this might be a big deal. Movie came out in 2001, and then it had huge box office success, critically acclaimed. It won Oscars, and then they made 2 more versions of it. All 3 of them did the same, and it was a group of movies called Lord of the Rings. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. After that, there were a bunch of studios that started to see, hey, people like that. We should try and do that. And they thought, let's try and adapt some fantasy books. Some of them were good.
Yeah.
Some of them were pretty meh. Some of them were really shit. And then people stopped doing it. And then they found a different genre that made a lot of money called teen dystopian sci-fi shit, which I won't even get onto. Let's go over to TV. In 2011, came out a little TV show. Suddenly blew the internet away.
Yeah.
Called Game of Thrones. That went on for a little while, and then everyone went, wait, people really like fantasy in TV, and we can do that? And with that budget? And then there were other shows that came out after Game of Thrones, or even when it was still airing, that tried to adapt it on similar source material, some of which still do it today to varying degrees of success. And then eventually kind of changed TV in the sense that, oh my God, we can have these massive budgets. And then it kind of went away. And I think we're just seeing the same now with anime, where it's like Frieren and, Delicious Dungeon came out, and people are like, holy shit, fantasy is back. And then it'll probably say to publishers as well as animation studios, oh my God, people want more fantasy. That's why we have Uber Black being greenlit, why we'll have other ones. Like I started seeing on Twitter feeds on like those manga and anime news channels saying like, this has been greenlit. Yeah. This has been picked up. This has been serialized. And they'll come out to varying degrees of success until the fantasy genre then goes, it's cyclical, like fashion, in the way where it's like, okay, fantasy will have its time in the light because someone did something new and fresh, and it will go away. And then it will come back again because someone thought of something interesting, maybe in a different medium, or maybe again in the same medium. But ultimately, I think it's kind of those things where you're breaking through the ceiling and people go, oh my God, there's all this space. We have all this new material to work with. And they do that until
it's filled up.
It eventually it's filled up and it's all the same. And I think that's just the case with all the genres in anime and manga or in any medium, right? It's until someone decides to try something that we haven't seen before is when we go, wait a minute, is sci-fi good again? ? Yeah. And it'll just be the fact that someone decided to come up with a sci-fi concept that was fun, or adapt something that is old that no one knew about. Like, how many people knew that Pluto was a manga until the anime came out?
No,
and everyone went like, what's this? What is this?
Yeah.
This
You know?
new anime, this new gen anime.
And then when 20
Bro.
if 20th Century Boys ever gets adapted, and people will be like, wait, this is the dude who did Pluto? Wait, what? And it'll become this whole thing. But that's at least how I see genres specifically, or even just like tropes and trends, right? Like there was Game of Thrones example. There was so many new series that came out that said they wrongly looked at Game of Thrones and said, we just have to make our series dark and very, very R-rated, and it will succeed.
Yeah,
and they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of looking at someone who's succeeding and asking yourself, okay, how do I emulate that success, but in my own way, instead of just looking at the surface level of like, okay, if I just adapt a novel series that's got a big fan base, I'll just make a shit ton of money. Right, got it, easy. And I think animation studios now realize that, at least when they're adapting the works of other authors, and adapting, you know, newer works, you know, like I hope the Dandadan anime is really good, but you know, we'll see. And I think that will be something that, at least in comedy, brings out something fresh and new, because it's very well written, it's very funny, and it's dumb, but it also takes itself very seriously when it needs to. And also doesn't, you know, and they're great. They're great set pieces. They're great jokes, and they're interesting characters. You know, they're very relatable. But that would be my yap session on all that in terms of like those genres. But I will
give you the floor for as long as you want. I would just like to piggyback off that real quick, because you brought up an interesting point. With media, I think there's two things. One, nowadays, with the amount of I'm not saying this is really a problem per se, but like obviously a lot of running shows, they don't last as long as they used to, so they kind of just come and go for the most part. Obviously you have shows, obviously One Piece is still airing, it's been airing since like 1990, however long, but I feel like a lot of series, they're not long running anymore. So like sometimes some of them, or majority of them, if they don't blow up and become mainstream, they kind of just like come and go, or whatever. Even with certain mainstream stuff, there's a lot of things now that's just like, we're past that. We're onto the new kicks now, the new shoes or whatever. And it's like another thing is that everyone's doing the same thing. I feel like a lot of authors, I can understand as to why, given success, and if you're fed the same meal over and over again, and then you were then fed something else mixed in with it, you're gonna kind of look at it crazy, like, it doesn't taste like what I'm used to. So you're gonna be weirded out most likely. And I feel like it's the same with most things that's coming out. A lot of people doing the same thing. They're scared to take the leap to do something completely different than to what we're used to. I was like, I understand as to why, even though there are shows that obviously do that, but I'm talking about on a more like grand scale, like take it to the, take it to the next step. And I feel like that's what's like lacking. I think creativity for the most part. And that's why I say it's like, it just depends on how you do it.
I think
don't take, you don't take that
I
step.
think with anime, in terms of like grand scale, we've been kind of spoiled in the sense that now our ceiling for expectations and the output of how good animation is, or how good music is, sound design, voice acting, in all aspects, is so high compared to other media in not in any kind of medium, is that it's kind of put this pressure in a sense that this has to be good straight out of the gate, or else it will not get a second season. It will not continue to get adapted. And I think part of that is also just the risk reward of animation studios and creatives. Like, I bet a lot of them probably believe that what they're making is good, so people will latch onto it. But then other people just want to make something just good and hope that people enjoy it, which results in the small successes like Frieren, where, like, you know, I don't think anyone thought it was going to become the next big show that season and like take over Twitter. I think people knew it was going to have a hardcore fan base, because you already had a manga that was, you know, very much loved, had been running for years, still going. But in terms of, I think it's also a problem, and I don't see it too much in terms of like people who watch a lot of TV or watch a lot of movies, where they're like, what's the best movie this season? What's the best TV show this season? Whereas anime and some way, like people who play a lot of video games are like, what's the next big game coming out this quarter? What's the biggest show coming out this season? Yeah. And it's kind of that hype factor where you're waiting for something that wows you so much that you're always going to be disappointed because you're expecting the best. Yeah. You're always expecting the hypest shit. You're expecting that show that made you feel like, oh my God, this is anime that you had when you were younger, and you're like, holy fucking shit. Yeah, it is, and that's a problem because you know
people they don't. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you go.
But they don't look at things for what they are anymore.
Yes,
they would watch it with whatever was the last big thing. They'll watch it with that in the back of their mind, to where it's like, if this doesn't wow me in the same amount of time that the last show did, if not quicker, I won't mess with it as much. I've seen a lot of people, it's just straight comparing. Like, they don't, like, you look at certain shows. I'll give JJK as an example. I feel like a lot of people that I've seen on Twitter, they don't look at JJK, even though I'm not saying JJK is like anything that's like deep or philosophical, but they're not looking at the series for what it is. They look at it, it's like, oh, it doesn't do this compared to this, or this isn't the same as this. It's just like,
right.
If you just saw the show for what it was and stop comparing it, like someone that you're not gonna think. They watched they had Nana as one of their favorites. This was about 2 years ago. They had Nana as one of their favorites. And they were watching Love is War. And they said they don't fuck with Love is War because it's not Nana. And I said, my boy, my brother in Christ.
What?
Look, Love is War, and what Love is War is trying to do. And then at the end, when you're finished, you can then compare it to see which one you like more. Don't do it whilst you're watching the series, because since Nana's your top one, you're not gonna you're gonna try and put it like it needs to meet these insane expectations. Yeah. Like they're not consuming media, right? Yeah. I don't want to sit here and sound like an elitist when I say that, but like you get you get what I'm trying to say. Like, they're not consuming media the way media is meant to be consumed. I don't know. I just feel like it's a lot of like I don't know what people be like looking at when they're like watching stuff. But
yeah, I think in terms of like consuming media or art, I think there shouldn't really be any rules on how people want to. Yeah. But I agree to the extent that you're saying that people always like to compare something to something else that they love so much that they're not giving the new thing the time of day.
Yeah.
Because, you know, art is going to be repetitive at the same time. It can be really interesting if you just don't try and compare it to the thing next to you. Like, comparison is the death of joy in every single kind of way, you know? It just is in any way. Like if you're creating content, you're comparing yourself to someone else, you're going to hate everything because you're going to think you're not good or whatever. 10, if you're, 10 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s, thanks YouTube, appreciate it. But you know, even if you're like a mangaka, imagine like you're in the same magazine and imagine you're in Weekly Shonen Jump and you are now ranked number 7 and you're looking at Oda and you're like, I can't be him. I just can't do it. Yeah. He's just too good. What am I doing with my life?
And mangaka have been destroyed, like internally from that system.
Internally from that, they just do not want to try it again. Yeah. And I think when it comes to people who do that with like your Nana and Kaguya, example, is that when people learn what it is that makes stories, it's just this meets this. Yeah. Like Kaguya is just Nana meets another comedy.
Yeah.
People will be like, oh, well, it's just this then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not impressive. And it's suddenly like, no, it is, because no one thought to do that.
Yeah.
Because you didn't think to do it. You didn't. No one did. And then someone did it.
Yeah. Or else that's it. Or else Nana just would have been that in the first place, and it would have been an even greater work. Like those, the creative, it's very interesting talking about like how to properly intake media and art consumption. And I think even going to what River initially said in terms of people being more appreciative or looking for narratives, I like to say that at least in the West, that started a lot with like the revolution of movie reviews, red letter media dissecting the Star Wars prequels, people like Cosmonaut and High Top Film crashing into the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, the MCU movies, etc. And like I think that because of those the plot hole, looking at plot holes of different things, cinema sins type stuff. I think that because of those things, it has reshaped how like a lot of people consume media. It has in some ways increased standards and things that people are constantly trying to compare and look for. The method of looking for the next Game of Thrones when you're watching The Witcher, despite being two completely different works of art trying to achieve two completely different things on different platforms.
You'll never meet
different
that
periods.
same expectation.
Like Mugen said, it's the theft of joy. Comparison is the theft of joy. Like if you live with that mindset, if you go into every individual creative work of art with the mindset of, oh, it was influenced by something, and if I've seen that already, then this is less impressive to me, then you'll never be impressed again.
Yeah.
Quite.
And so with that, I'll literally say to the JJK fans, it's literally just Naruto with demons. That's literally it, guys. Like, let's be honest. It's just Naruto with demons.
No, because going off of, like, literally going off of that, it's like, they'll be like, oh, like, let's say my favorite is JJK or something, or let's say my favorite is one of the big three, and I say, oh, Dragon Ball's bad, and their counter argument is, well, it inspired this. What does that have to do with anything? I'm confused.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
Inspiration doesn't mean like, yeah, okay, cool. It was the gateway. I would say that, like, obviously Dragon Ball was the father, but definitely who I forgot his name, and it's annoying me. The guy who did Astro Boy. Yeah, Tezuka. Tezuka's the grandfather.
Yeah, Tezuka.
Like, he really revolutionized
like
Japanese media in like as a whole, really, I would say. But when it comes to like manga, should I say, more so. And
you go even further back, you learn, oh, Tezuka literally just got his drawing style from some American he met during like World War II. Oh, okay, well, Astro Boy's not as good. Destroying all of manga. Manga doesn't matter. You know, it's like, you know what? All of manga and anime past the 80s sucks because they're all inspired by Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball already exists. So therefore, it's redundant. Doesn't matter. Get over it.
Imagine discrediting like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Dragon Ball, and like in like any 80s manga by saying, oh, it's just Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
What? What are you saying? It's like just because it came from the horse's mouth doesn't mean
Pluto literally based on Astro Boy.
I don't fuck with Pluto.
Dude.
Astro Boy's literally in Pluto. Like, oh my god.
Like, dude, like, fuck.
Like, you're telling me.
So he stole someone else's story. Okay, yeah, cool. Wow, it's amazing. You know, it's like, it's so dumb. It's like, that's art. It's literally. And I think going back to what Cardi was saying, just like, it's funny how I think about this sometimes where we say like consume art in terms of, you know, it's like we have to always be continuously just fucking eating every single thing that comes out. And I think the anime community is very guilty of that. Like, there's no other medium, again, before, like, that says, what are you watching this season? Like, how much of this season have you watched? You know, it's like, you know, there are people though who like are sitting there, they're watching their TV show and they're checking off that episode on, like, you know, another application and stuff like that, either to keep track, which, hey, I do it too, because I forget. I'm just like, fuck, what chapter am I? I don't remember. And but it's in a way where it's like, okay, as soon as this is done, next thing, you know, I only have X amount of hours in the day. I must consume art, and then by the end of it, I think you're like, what did I watch today? Like, what did I see that made me happy? You know,
it becomes content instead of art.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I see people.
I'm not saying that there can't be content, you know.
Sorry, I was real quick. I see people on Twitter when they do their media threads, and it's just like, we was in April. I seen some of like 140 something entries, and I'm like, how have you peeped so much? It's like, you're not enjoying what you're watching. You're doing it for the company. You're doing it for the thread. Like, you can't be doing it because you're enjoying what.
And we're doing it for a Twitter thread now. Like, that's what we're doing.
Like, I'm making media.
Like, you're not even making YouTube videos. Like,
dude, I need Elon to see me. I need him to see me, bro.
Like, I go watch. Every single Marvel movie, and then back to back watch every single one, and after that, I'm right onto watching One Piece in about like a month. Then after One Piece, I'm reading Lord of the Rings or something. It's like, slow down. Like, enjoy and understand what you've watched so far. Because if I ask you a question,
no one can handle that much.
If I ask you a question in the series, you'll most likely freeze.
That's why I've held off on reading.
I think there was a rubber dude, and then there was a ring. I think that's it. I think, Yeah,
Like that was a
Good
goal.
story.
I've held off on reading so much, watching so much. I still haven't seen Top Gun.
I haven't either.
I still haven't seen Top Gun.
yeah.
I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
You will never. Okay, well, that's get out.
No, you
But,
should.
know,
Lord of the
But
Rings is
I want to be in a point. But I want to be in a point
I'm
to
kidding.
where it's not
Yeah.
just a checklist for me.
Yeah.
I
agree.
want to get to
I
the
agree.
point to where I have the time to just sit down, read through every page of Slam Dunk, read
Yeah.
through every word of the script of Lord of the Rings while watching the extended cuts. I want to be
Yeah.
able to sit there and not just consume it to then make a video or to then come
Yes.
here and talk about it or to then put it on a list on my letterbox, on my Mal, on my video game recommendation. Like I want to be able to enjoy like each individual creatively, meticulously cultivated piece of art that exists.
Because me
I
and
wanna
you
see.
spoke about it.
Yeah.
Me and you spoke about it one time, Cardiac. The last time we was like just chilling in cool after the
Yeah.
pod for like how long. A lot of people, and that's why I said I'm not the type of guy to really judge someone or call them out or try to say that like they're a fraud or anything like that. But I feel like when it comes to a lot of critically acclaimed pieces of media, I feel like a lot of people, they just watch it because it's critically acclaimed. Nothing wrong with that. Obviously, for a lot of people saying that something's good, you want to see for yourself. But there's certain people that I see that would also then gas it up. But it's like I kind of look at you in questions like, I don't think you're doing that because you actually feel that way. I feel like certain people do it because they want to be the same or be like, they want to join the conversation. They want to be with the cool kids. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not like, I'm not gonna say that's everyone, but there's just certain people that I've seen throughout the years that I feel that do that.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's extremely similar. So I went to a uni where I studied like filmmaking.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the kind of people I met
Yes.
in terms of people being like, "Have you seen this? Did you see this? Have you seen this?"
Yeah.
And
Cinephiles.
and oh my god, at one point you're just like, you start thinking, do I like movies if I have to be around people like this all the time? Because there were some people who would learn that one of the girls would be like, never seen Star Wars, and I was like, oh yeah, you should watch it, it's really good. I mean, it's, you know, Star Wars, you know, just watch it. And then one dude would be like, I'm so sorry, like someone died in her family, like holy shit, she's never seen Star Wars, how is she being alive this long? You know, how has she survived this long without seeing one of the greatest sci-fi stories of all time that changed the world? You know, and it's like, hey guys, guess what? I read manga. I haven't read One Piece. I haven't read a lot of
like
the
you
greats.
haven't read all 1,114 chapters of One Piece right now. Why not?
Yeah, I'm getting there. But it's one of those things as well where people will recommend that stuff as well because they have this feeling that because I recommend it to you, I then feel like I am now showing you the thing that I think is great. Therefore, I'm the closest thing to the person who made it.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like you show someone a movie or an anime or a manga and then they love it and they come back and you feel probably pretty good about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like,
Vindicated.
I told you this shit was good. I told you, man. And it's this feeling where it's like, but if they say, yeah, it was okay, you'll suddenly be like, why didn't they like it? Why didn't they like it? They should have liked it because I recommended it, you know? And I think it's that kind of thing that can be seen in anime and manga. And like, don't get me wrong, like now and then I'll get comments where I'll just be told continuously to read the same series again and again. And I'll just say now, if you want me to read something, don't tell me to, because then I'll read it.
Yeah.
That's the fastest way to get me to read it. Because I'll be honest, I'm looking at reading One Piece near the end of the year because no one's told me to read it, and that excites me because then I could just
I won't
gas
it up right now. I'll let you experience.
That's surprising.
I'll
a YouTuber makes manga videos hasn't been told to watch One Piece.
Yeah, that's very surprising. They are like leeches. I'm surprised.
Yes, they're leeches. Yeah, that's what I know. So, but luckily, I've been, you know, I worked with a guy at my last job who he had the whole box set and all that, and I would just be like, oh yeah, like so. Can it still be that good? That many chapters? And he's like, yeah, it just is. Yeah. And it's just like. And he didn't hype it up. He didn't say anything like that. He was just like, yeah, I'll let you borrow them if you want. And it became that thing where I was like, shit, this man's really sold me just by saying, yes, there are that many chapters and they're that good. Yeah. And that's all you have to say.
I think that's
you know,
I Okay, because going off of like we were saying, like if people were to come back, if I recommended something and someone said that they didn't like it, thing is with me, I've said it multiple times. I don't care if someone likes or dislikes something. It's your reasoning
that's
for
good.
liking or disliking it. For the sole fact that if
Right.
you were to say something like, oh, was like an example, like I've seen someone say they didn't like Monster. They got like a few episodes in, they didn't like it because nothing happened, and I'm just like, now if you just said
Rich
that you
gonna
didn't
freak
like
out.
it,
Don't say it.
I'm like, okay, cool, I can respect that. It's just not your thing. You didn't like it, but for you to say and say that like nothing happened, I don't think we watched the same thing.
I think
that was Dylan.
it's I think
Dylan
people
said
just
that?
have a problem articulating, you know,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like nothing happened. There's a bit of a tangent. There's a quote in game design. I can't remember which developer said it, but they said our job is to figure out what the players what's their problem and what they want, but from their want I have to figure out what they need. And so when someone says like, oh, nothing happened, what does that mean? Does that mean they weren't paying attention? Does that mean that they just weren't interested in the character and they felt like nothing happened? It's like there's so many different things that could come from just nothing happened as opposed to that, or like, you know, because there are people who will read stuff, but you know, they're thinking about something else completely in their brain, or watching something and they're thinking about, you know, what am I going to cook for tea tonight? Man, I really need to watch the latest One Piece. You know, like that's kind of that mindset. So
I think that's more so people that really expect like the I'm gonna call them meatheads, for lack of better words. It's like if they go into a series and there's not action, there's not like flashy action within the first 2 seconds, they don't like it, and it's just like,
where my peak at?
You call them it. You call them meatheads. Go ahead. Call them
there's nothing wrong with being a meathead as long as you like accept it. But it's like there's certain, like they will go into a series expecting that, and it's just like you could do your research and see if it's going to be something that fits your need, but then it's not. But then you go into it with the expectation of you want it to fit what's in your mind. Then when it doesn't, you're like, oh, this shit's trash. This is like,
so now it sucks.
It's
trash.
shit, dude.
It's mid. It's like,
don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Like I've probably, honestly, I probably ruined so many blind experiences for myself by doing so much extensive research. Like I'll be honest, I fully watch like analysis videos or like why I love videos of like different games or movies or shows. Well, not movies. Movies I tend to but shows and games, because of whether the financial commitment, the time commitment for shows, etc. So like, and you know, it kind of goes into what Mugen was saying, to where sometimes I think we all do it, but I'm definitely victim to falling into just the there's 24 hours in a day, but there's also 24 hours of whatever I have to watch today, 24 episodes of whatever I have to watch today. So I gotta micromanage my time, and but I think that the reason I do it, even beyond time management, is the fact that I don't want to. Not everything is made for me. Not everything is made for me to watch, for me to consume, for me to even analyze. There are some shows that I watch where like I just have my brain off. I rewatched not Perfect Blue. Perfect Blue doesn't even have an anime, I don't think. But there's it was it does. Well, there was this
it's the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There was this show there was this there was this show it was about this dude who joined this club in college, and they were they get drunk a lot. It was off the coast. It was at an ocean. I forgot what it's called. It's a comedy manga.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I forgot the name though.
Yeah, I'm forgetting what it's called.
And he in like the cover, like a sailor hat on or some shit. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I ain't seen it though. I know what you're talking about.
I initially watched that show and I was like, this shit is ass. This is the furthest thing from funny. I never want to see this again. Yeah. And then I read it. I just took my time and I read, like, no one that I knew was like really caping for it. They weren't like, oh, Cardiac, you're stupid. You don't know how to watch this. You're not funny anyway. That's why you don't get it. But like, I just took it upon myself to reinterpret the story in a way that probably was like less seeking something specifically. I went into it with zero expectations. in a medium that, at least in my opinion, sometimes like I've read things that I found were funny in the anime, and it just was not funny, probably because of the self pacing that happens with manga.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
I've read it and I just reinterpreted the story and the jokes and the events in such a different way that it was so much better to me because the expectations were gone. The time
Yeah.
commitment was gone. The internet was removed, the extra opinions, the analysis, the background information, it didn't matter anymore. And no matter how much research you can do, granted, it's great to do it so you can know it's for you, but you also don't want to misjudge something looking for something that you were never going to find in the first place. If you're looking for, I'll go back to 2 conversations ago, if you're looking for the next Game of Thrones, you're not going to find it in The Witcher.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the next Adventure Time, you're not going to find it in Owl House.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the next Avatar: The Last Airbender, don't go into Korra with those expectations. If you're looking for the next Frieren, don't watch Shangri-La Frontier with those expectations. Don't do that. Like, don't stop putting
that last one. Don't do that.
Exactly. But it's the fact that but that's what people will do. People will just have these lingering thoughts from the latest, greatest thing that they saw and try to find the next big thing.
Hunter x Hunter fans, every time you watch a shonen, don't expect it to be like Hunter x Hunter.
That's my exact
can't happen.
That's my exact feelings with Blue Lock fans. Or sorry, not Blue Lock fans, but people who went into Blue Lock when it first got adapted. Because obviously a lot of people, the average person doesn't read manga more so. You know what I'm saying? They're just casual. They, you know what I'm saying, after a long day, want to sit back and kick back and watch some anime. You know what I'm saying? Nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people, when they first seen Blue Lock and saw the premise, it's just like a lot of sports fans, it's like, oh, fuck Blue Lock. It's not teamwork. We like teamwork. We don't like one-on-ones, blah, blah. And it's like, my thing is, yeah, cool. You cannot like that, but I think the premise of Blue Lock is very interesting. My only issue is the execution. And my problems is way later on in the series. I would say early Blue Lock is great, but I think it kind of just, after a certain arc, it just, I don't know, starts doing shit for the sake of doing shit.
Yeah.
I'll take the grunt for that. Those were Haikyuu fans.
Yeah.
We're sorry.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I was just looking at Blue Lock for what it is. It's like, oh, it's a sports series, Squid Game, pretty much. It's like one for all. And I fuck with it. It's a different take on sports than what we usually know. And it's like, but people's going into it expecting something. So now that it's like, it's not that. It's like, oh, fuck Blue Lock. We don't like it. We like teamwork. This isn't Ao Ashi. This isn't Haikyuu. This isn't Kuroko. But like, I don't know. Last one, I would say another series that I think is getting like a rise. I would say this is more so manga. Now, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think romance somewhat. Because I feel like now a lot of the a lot of like manga recent that are getting talked about have some type of like romance, and you got like Blue Box. I forgot that one series. Give me a sec. I'm about to get the name of it. It's ones that I've been seeing a lot recently.
That's a manga only.
Yeah. Give me a quick,
Grand Blue.
A quick sec. Oh, Grand Blue. Okay.
That's what I was talking about.
The fragrant.
Oh, that
flower.
you were talking about.
The fragrant flower blooms with dignity.
Right.
That's another one that I've been seeing like as of recent. Because I feel like a lot. Okay, I'm not okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna say okay. I'll reiterate. I'll reword my point. I wouldn't say it's romance that's becoming big as a genre. I think a lot of people are starting to appreciate romance as a collective. Like much more people are getting on romance than what they because a lot of people think romance is cringe and corny and bad, but it's like when they actually watch it, they turn around and say, "Oh, never mind, this is actually really good," and they end up watching more.
When the seinen fan movies. Lets down his guard and goes, "You know what, romance."
Those I'm like those edgies. Like if it's not gory blood, hibbity hoobla, I'm not liking it. It's like, bro, please.
Yeah. I wanted a big dude with a big sword, but this romance is actually kind of good, I guess. Man, right.
Like life isn't this serious. Calm down. You can.
I think that's. It's probably also because of people coming into the Like every year, there's more people coming into the demographic of just anime and manga, and I think more of them are just more inclined and open to reading anything, which is probably the best way to go into just like experiencing any kind of art. It's just like, just give me anything, and I'll just see what I fuck with, and also probably like content creators, and to a certain degree, exposing series that would never have been heard of, especially in English, compared to Japan, because like, if you're in Japan, there are forums all the time of everything that is coming out. You see the magazines all the time. A lot of them have online portals to do these now as well. So you see when a new series comes out, and these more niche ones rely on people to translate. They rely on people to do that. So it is good. I think it's also just people looking for something new, and people like having that come to Jesus moment. It's like, what if I don't have to watch more shonen? What if I could read a romance story? What if I don't watch two people beat each other up, and in fact just hang out and go to the convenience store, And I think that's probably one of those things that's just slowly changing with those demographics and people just experiencing all this. I think that's ultimately good. That's a positive for art and artists, because then you're like, holy shit, there's so much that you can just experience, and hopefully it's good, and hopefully it gets finished. Finished is important as well.
If you told me back in the day, if you asked my like 14-year-old self and you explained, let's just say Land of the Lustrous came out back then, and you explained Land of the Lustrous to me, I'm looking at you crazy. It's like, why am I going to watch a series about Rose?
Yeah.
But then now, it's like I'm much more. I'm not what I was. I'm much more open to like a lot more things than I was back then. Which is a
great thing.
I was a meathead back in the day. I was one of the people that I'm like getting at now. I was once that until I opened my horizon.
We all have that phase.
Yeah, but
we all have that phase in any art, because
the greatest things I've ever read. If you explain that to me, when I was 14, nah.
He'd be like, "Who are you? Get out!"
Nah.
And I think it's also with the magazines as well. Like, you look at Weekly Shonen Jump and you look at what seems to be the most popular series. They're all very different. They're all not very. They're not all like similar. It's like you have One Piece, then you have Blue Box, then you have Akane Banashi, which is completely different from anything else that's in Weekly Shonen Jump, and it's very good.
Yep.
And all these, and then you have Sakamoto. And all these different series that just feel so different from each other, as opposed to what they kind of were for a while. And I think that's kind of what anime needs now. It just
Ruby
needs
Dragon.
more variety. And there hasn't been, for a long time, there hasn't been a stack like this. In a while. I don't know when, but if you look at there are like these videos or like articles talking about this was the greatest year in Weekly Shonen Jump because it had, in this magazine, it had Rookies, it had Hunter x Hunter, it had One Piece, it had all these huge names just in one magazine. That was like never happened again.
Was the closest thing to that when you had a Food Wars, a Promised Neverland, a Dr. Stone, a My Hero, a Black Clover,
had a Hunter x Hunter,
all in the same magazine.
There was a year
that's crazy.
The lineup was absolutely like stacked. And I look back and I was like, "There's no way this like was actually what Shonen Jump was. It's just like a stacked ass lineup of crazy like."
Yeah,
it was an era, because a lot of those IQ as well, Assassination Class, like that's a lot of overlap from like 2012 to 2018. I think is when a lot of them started ending. Like basically that post Big Three era, it was a lot of diversification in Weekly Shonen Jump that like exposed a lot of people to different still shonen, but just different stories in terms of themes and settings and just approaches to how to tell it.
Yeah, I do like that we're getting to the point where shonen's just a brand more than just like a thing that tropes are adhered to in a demographic.
Yes.
So when you think shonen, you think battle. You think like the same type of genre. And I think it's great that we're getting to the point where shonen just literally is like, it's just a magazine. Like there's so many different, like you've got a very dark series here with a lot of death and a lot of blood, and then you've got a very nice romance sports series here as well, and then you've got your adventure story with One Piece, and you've got all these other ones, and it's like, it's ultimately a net positive in terms of having people experience new stuff. And I think if you're sitting around being like, it's not the same as it used to be, I think it's kind of like the living in the past thing, where it's just like, just get over it. Time moves on for everyone. Go read new thing, or just reread Dragon Ball or whatever, or rewatch it.
Yeah, whatever fits your fancy, or
The thing is, even when I say that, like when I said earlier, like the vibe's different. I'm not gonna lie to you. There are, I would say, in terms of like more mainstream show, because I feel like looking back at some of these old shows like Dragon Ball, like Dragon Ball's still good for what it's worth. But I think in terms of like when you look back at it now and like you kind of like compare it to some other like recent shonen, like Dragon Ball's not as crazy on like a objective standpoint. I know there's no objectivity within media, but I'm sure like you kind of like if you were to compare like Dragon Ball to like Hunter x Hunter, and then you just say, oh, like Dragon Ball's cool. Like Dragon Ball's a great series, but like if you were to compare certain aspects, they have improved a lot on certain things.
Yeah,
as of recent compared to back then. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's in a lot of different things with like, you know, the technology we now have, the people who are putting in more effort than you could ever. Also, like people realizing that they don't have to do weekly episodes anymore. They can just do seasonal. And people prefer that as well because you have more time to actually fucking make something. And pacing Dragon Ball suffers because of that, because it was going by the weekly basis. And ultimately with Dragon Ball, you know, it's also came out during a time, especially in English, where we didn't really know what anime could be. We were like, what is this? You know, what is this? This is a cartoon, I think. Yeah. And as time goes on, we know exactly the difference between an anime and a cartoon, right? In terms of like the things that are inherent to how they portray story.
Yeah.
And we look at I remember being like on Cartoon Network and I would see like an advert for an anime and I'd be like, ooh, what is that? Yeah. That just looks very different from anything else I've seen. Whereas now it's like, you know that the next like Mappa show that comes out will have a big budget, will have a lot of animation that will probably be of a certain quality that will make you go, well, this is just amazing in the fact that they were able to make this, you know? And I think that's just one of the things that, it's completely, it's crazy. It's different now. It's just very different. And we don't know what it will be further because after animation, it's like, there's no other ways to distinguish. It's like with games. Games are getting to the point where graphics look so good. It's like, how do you distinguish yourself amongst every other game that wants to look realistic? Yeah. Oh, let's not do that. Let's do something else. And I think that's what anime is getting to the point where it's like, what is the best way to represent this manga in an adaptation? Do we try to adapt it exactly how it was drawn? Which is what they're doing with like Junji Ito, right? Where it's like, let's literally make it black and white. Let's rotoscope the actors, which is insane that they did that because that no one does that anymore. It takes too long, but they thought, no, it has to. We have to do it this way. It's the only way it'll work.
I'm curious about stuff like Uzumaki. Yeah. Like, how are you going to adapt that into an anime that is able to achieve the same visceral images and like, man, it's so hard to decide even how you're gonna translate. Even going back to you talking about Don DeDon's eventual adaptation, like if I could think of a studio that would be best to portray Don DeDon's artwork, it's crazy potential of colors and adaptation of dimensions of different like creatures and just people in the series, it would be Science Saru, but also. How are you going to do that? How are you going to like adapt this insane premise, these insane races, the insane scope of this story in 12 episodes, 24 episodes in traditional animation? And like you're going to draw that again and then put it in? No.
Not everything needs to be insane animation. I feel like if they were to turn around and adapt like 20th Century Boys now, you would have to take like the same type of like what's the word? You would have to do something like Monster. I feel like something like 20th Century Boys would work in. It would work. It would only work in an oldenized. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm gonna just say it anyway. Like a more like retro style, rather than it having flashy, realistic. You know, like you get what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
like
well,
certain
with
stories,
20th Century Boys,
certain stories like that, it's like it
it's
doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to
very
be.
little that.
Yeah,
Majority of 20th Century Boys is just constant mystery,
Yeah.
constant revelations, and people talking and learning new shit. And it's like, to show that in animation, you could just copy the manga one for one. But I think the thing that I think distinguishes great anime is being able to say, yes, we're going to adapt it, but if we adapt it like it's a manga, we'll only ever be trying to imitate it. So we have to do something that looks completely different.
I get
It's why certain moments in some anime work better than the actual manga, because they have the ability to do something that manga can't do, which is the act of motion, you know? And there are moments that feel all the more powerful because of that. But then there are moments that only a manga can do, you know? So it's like kind of depends about that.
All right. Well, on that note, just bring us to, you know, a very sad moment of the pod. However, before we get too sad, happy things. Make sure to go check out Mugen's channel if you haven't. You know what I'm saying? Go tap in. Great content over there. In the title, you can click on the ad or whatever. Go to the description, whatever you want to do for that, of course. And, you know, as always, you know, tap in the Discord, tap in the Patreon, all that jazz. For us and the Twitch. But that's all from us. Sorry we gotta go. But let us know your next up anime genre in the comments. And
Peace.
Peace.
Bye.